Okay. So this is actually the other half of the previous lesson. What have we been doing? We've been factoring trinomials, right? And remember the last lesson I showed you 3 different methods. One was factor by grouping. The second one was guess and check. And then the third one, I think most of us like, right, where we multiplied the number in front. Okay, so the only difference here is that we're actually solving. So what does that mean? Well, when we solve, you have to have an equals. We have to have an equation. Notice if we look back at all the previous problems, was there anything that was equal to? No, we were just factoring. Okay, so now we want to throw in this extra step of actually solving it. Okay, now when you have 2 things multiplied together, so it shows A times B equals 0. The zero product property basically says A has to be equal to 0, B has to be equal to 0, or both of them are equal to 0, right? Just think about it. If you have 2 things that are multiplied together then equals 0, doesn't one of them have to be 0? Or 0 times 0 is 0? So here we have, this is already in parentheses. It's already in factored form. And it's equal to 0. Now I'm not going to distribute. I'm not going to multiply this out. What am I going to do? I'm going to set each part. So I'm going to have x minus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to have x plus 4 equals 0. No, I'm basically saying these 2 parts are multiplied together. Right?
We can just do FOIL.
No. If we do FOIL, then we're going to put it back in a trinomial form. The whole idea here is try to get it in parentheses. If it's already in parentheses, then we're just going to set each part equal to 0 and solve. Let me explain. So let's go ahead, add 3. Right, so we get x equals 3. Well, think about that. If x was equal to 3, that would make that 3 minus 3, which would make that 0. 0 times 7. Does that give us 0? Yeah, so that's a solution, right? If I were to plug that in, I can check that. Plugging in 3 here, I get 0 times 7 equals 0. That works. What's my other solution? Well, solve x plus 4 equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 4. What's 0 minus 4? Negative 4. Yeah, I'm going to write it out the first few times. If you just recognize, if you already have it in this factor form and you want to just write x equals 3 and x equals negative 4, that's fine. So if I plug in negative 4, that would make that negative 7 times 0. Well, negative 7 times 0, does that give us 0? Yeah. So both of those are our solution here. Okay.
Negative 3 and negative.
Yeah. Sometimes when you see like the solution, you might have it like this, 3 comma negative 4, meaning both of these are your answer. If you just want to write x equals 3 and x equals negative 4, you could also write 3 comma negative 4 like that. Any way you want to write your answer, these are all fine. Okay, let's look at the next equation. Again, I'm starting with the stuff in the parentheses. Basically, I have 2 things multiplied together. I have h and h plus 5. So what are my possible answers for h? So I could have h equals 0, or I could have h plus 5 equals 0. And then subtract 5, so what do we get? Oh, that's supposed to be a negative 5.
No, negative 5.
Negative 5. So we have h equals 0 and h equals negative 5. Okay. So yeah, there's really no work to do.
Extra h on the outside. That's all you have to do.
Oh, that h, think about it. If I plugged in 0, that would be 0 times 5.
Do we have to get both of them?
Yes. So the first part is easy because they're already, I'm giving you ones in factored form. It's going to get more difficult because we're going to have to go back to that factoring part. So here, it's already factored for us. So what could be equal to 0? x minus 4 equals 0, or n plus 2 equals 0. Just basically set each part equal to 0 and solve. Remember, that's what it's. Now, whenever I'm checking my solutions, I'm not writing it out. You can just kind of do that in your head, right? So if I add 4 to both sides, what do I get? I get 4. If I plug 4 in, I would have 0 times 6. Okay, that works. And what about the other solution? Yeah.
How do you just see? It's confusing.
Which one?
See, why would you do
Oh, okay. So this is not a trinomial. So I'm going to look for a GCF.
Oh, that thing.
Okay, so this goes back to all the other previous methods. So we should always look for a GCF first anyway, even if we have a trinomial. Okay, so 3 and what?
A negative.
What? Can I take out a 3y? Sure. Are we just agreeing with me, or do we see it?
I'm laughing.
We see it.
I sounds like
Or at least I see it.
I'm just thinking.
So just a quick reminder, the GCF is the largest, right, factor that you can take out of both parts. So 6 and 3 are both divisible by 3, so that's why I took a 3 out. And I have a y squared and a y. I could take a y out of both of those. And what am I left with in the parentheses?
2y minus 1?
2y minus 1. Okay. Now I have two things multiplied together that have to give us 0. So I'm going to set 3y equal to 0. And I'm going to set 2y minus 1 equal to 0. Okay, on the left side, I can divide both sides by 3, but that's just going to give us, what's 0 divided by 3? Good. And here I'm going to add 1. Running out of room a little bit, but that's okay, right? So we add 1, so I get 2y equals 1. And then I divide both sides by 2, and that gives us just a half. Now we can check our answer here. It would be a little tedious to plug in a half, but if you have your calculator, you would have 6 times 1/2 squared minus 3 times 1/2. So that's, yeah, so that works out. And then also plugging in 0, that also works. Okay, how about D? What have all these been equal to?
0.
Why?
That's a term. It's a 0.
They're all equal to 0 because it's called a zero product property. We have to make sure it's equal to 0. So what are we going to do in this one? We're going to move everything to one side. Okay, so I can either subtract 5m from both sides, or I could subtract 3m squared from both sides. Do you have a preference? 5m? Okay. So let's see. When I subtract 5m, so it's going to make that equal to 0. And it's okay that the 0 is on the left side. It doesn't really matter. These are not like terms. It's up to you. It really makes no difference. So I can't really subtract those because this one's an m squared and that's just a regular m.
So is that no solution?
Okay, what did I look for in the last one?
Oh,
Do I have anything in common with the two terms?
no, that's.
I could take an m out, right? 3 and 5 have no common factors though. So what am I going to be left with? It's going to be 3m minus 5. Remember, you could just do a quick check, distribute, and make sure you get what you started with. Now I have two things that are multiplied together that have to be equal to 0. So I have m equals 0 is one of them, right? Okay, now what? What else do I have? I have 3m minus 5 has to also be equal to 0.
That's m equals 5. Okay.
Good, so we're going to add 5 to both sides. 3/5 or 5/3?
5/3.
Yeah, so it's going to be m equals, just leave it as a fraction. Don't bother trying to change it into a mixed number. can leave it as an improper. Okay, next one is already equal to 0. Now, do I have any GCF here?
No.
No. Okay. Is there anything in front of the x squared?
No.
No. So I can go right to my factoring. Okay, remember, this was the first trinomial factors. We want two numbers that multiply together to give us -6 and combine to... Okay, 2 and 3, but one has to be positive, one has to be negative, though.
-2 and +3.
So let's see. Remember, you can do this. Yeah, but if I do -2 and +3, that won't work.
Or -2 and -3.
It's 6 and 1 then.
Yeah, but if it was -2 and -3, doesn't that multiply to give us a +6?
It would be 6 and 1.
It'll be 6 and -1. So I'm going to put +6 -1 here. Okay, now that I have it in factored form, what do we know? We know
Oh, wait.
x plus 6 has to be equal to 0, and x minus 1 has to be equal to 0.
So -6.
So -6 is one answer, and +1 is the other answer. Okay. So that's really, I mean, that's what we're going to do. So basically, we want to make sure it's equal to 0. We look for a GCF. If that doesn't work, then we factor it like we did last week. Now, is this equal to 0?
No.
No, so I have to add 28 to both sides first. So I'm going to get x squared plus 16x plus 28 equals 0. Okay, I don't have a coefficient in front of x squared, so I don't need to worry about multiplying anything out. What will this factor into? Two numbers that multiply together to give us 28 add up to 16.
7 and
7 and 4, but 7 plus 4 doesn't add up to 16. What else multiplies together to give us 28? Yeah, but they have to multiply together to give us 28. 14 and 2. Does 14 and 2 add up to 16?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm so smart.
So plus 14 plus 2. So what are our answers?
-14 and -2.
Good. So yeah, at this point, you can show setting both parts equal to 0, or I'm fine if you just kind of notice. What's always going to happen here? It's basically the opposite sign, right? Because you would be subtracting.
Is there going to be like a lot of this or quiz? Oh god.
So it's a combination of factoring and solving, but in order to solve, you have to factor it first. So is there going to be a lot of this? There's a few of them.
Not too much of
Oh
each
my
one.
god.
No, because you only have a certain amount of time, and it's just a quiz, so quizzes don't have as much, don't have as many problems on them.
When is the quiz this weekend?
Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Wednesday.
We have, okay, it's second period.
Okay,
That's what,
we'll be fine.
I thought it was like at the end of the day. I hate Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, no,
No, no.
I hear you there. Okay,
9 and
That would be.
9 and -3.
So, okay.
So plus 9 minus 3, do we agree? Yeah, that multiplies together to give us -27, and when we add them, we get 6. So what are our answers for G?
Equals -9.
Good,
G equals 3.
perfect. Oh, this one's already equal to 0, so I don't need to worry about moving anything. So I could go right to my parentheses. Okay. What goes into -15? 5 and 5 and -3?
Yeah.
Yeah, that multiplies together to give us -15, adds up to 2. So my answers are good. Okay, now we get into the ones that we had in the last lesson. Is there a GCF here? No, it's already equal to 0. So this is where we're going to multiply the 3 to the 6. Oh, sure. So we get x squared plus 11x plus 18. I'm not going to put the equal 0 because I'm going to put in my 3x. Remember, this is the method I showed you. And you can try guess and check, or you could do the factor by grouping, whatever works easier for you. Okay, can we come up with two numbers that multiply together to give us 18? Add up to them. Plus 9. Okay, now the most important thing, we can't forget to reduce. So can we reduce the first one?
Yeah.
By?
3.
But not the second one,
Yeah.
right? So I'm going to end up with x plus 3 and 3x plus 2. Now I'm going to bring down my equal to 0. Because remember, our goal with all of these is we want to figure out what does the variable equal. Okay, so set.
Can you like not reduce it, just go from there?
It's true, you can go from there, but I just want you to be careful because technically, see, that's why I didn't put an equal sign until I got down to here, because this is equivalent to the top line. It will work though, that's true.
You can do it for the second one.
Yeah, what did you guys get for the two answers here? -3 and positive 2/3?
J's prime.
Yeah, because you have to do 3x plus 2 equals 0, so subtract 2, right? So 3x equals -2, and then divide by 3, so -2/3. Okay, there's no GCF, it's equal to 0, so I'm going to multiply the 10 to the 7. So we get p squared minus 19p plus 70. Oh, actually, let me leave out the equals here. Okay. Two numbers that multiply together to give us 70 add up to -19. It's a hard one. It can't be -7 and -10. They do have to both be subtraction signs, though. So I'm going to put the 10 in front.
72 squared.
I know.
Wait,
You got it, Gabe?
-14 and -5.
Good. -14 and -5.
why don't you do 72 squared?
No, you just multiply the numbers.
Oh.
So just take the 10 and multiply it to the 7. Okay, can we reduce these?
No.
This one we can
By
reduce
2.
by 2. What about the second one?
2 or 5.
5 is bigger. You always want to reduce it as much as possible. So I have 5p minus 7 and 2p minus 1. Again, you could always FOIL that last result to make sure that we get back what we started with. Okay, this one's going to give us 2 fractions for our answers, right? So I'm going to have, what, 5p minus 7 has to be equal to 0? And 2p minus 1 equals, it looks like I should have given you a little bit more room for some of these problems.
7/5.
Good, this is going to give us 7/5
And 1/2.
and 1/2. Okay,
Is this like really like
yeah. What's the matter? So,
broad and it's just come up a lot? And
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
like, is this like a very important part with the 0 thing or not really?
Oh, this is really important. This shows up in every other math class. So, right? So that's why they say algebra is the foundations for all of the high school math that you do, whether you end up taking pre-calculus or statistics or any of that. This idea of solving, right, factoring and solving shows up in every area. It'll be in your geometry class, it'll be in algebra 2, it'll be in pre-calc, trig, no matter what you take. So yeah, It's one of those really important things. So if it doesn't make sense to you, come see me at bonus and make sure that we have mastered it, okay? All right, what do we have to do first? Make it equal to? Zero. It's called the zero product property for that reason. So I'm going to subtract the 20. Or if you want to think about it, you know, if you want to start skipping some steps, think about moving it to the other side, right? We'll make it minus. Okay, we got a coefficient in front, right? So I'm going to multiply 6 to the 20 to give us n squared plus 7n minus 120. Okay, 6n. I know with these bigger numbers it can get a little complicated. So if you have your calculators handy, right, just start dividing like think about 120. What can 120 be divided by? 10. And that's 10 and 12. That's not going to give us 7. 4. 4 and 30. But that won't give us 7. What else goes into 120? Oh, there's other numbers. Does 5 go into 120?
40?
Yeah. Or they can.
It can. Is that going to help us?
That'll be fine. Wait, no, sorry, that's not, that'll be 60.
How about
20.
8? Somebody with a calculator. Divide 120 by 8.
I didn't do this. 15.
15 and 8. If one's positive, one's negative, well that,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so plus 15 and a minus 8. I know, it can be a little tedious here. This one I can divide by 3. This one I could divide by 2.
What are we dividing?
Make it small.
You remember,
This is the 6.
so Ella, remember we have to make sure, once it's in that factored form, if I were to multiply this back out, right, I should end up with what I started with. So if I were to do FOIL, do I end up with my very top line? And the answer is yes. So otherwise, if you don't,
want to get it into a form where you can FOIL and you get it.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so what do we get for our two answers here?
Negative 5 over 2 and
5
4
over
over
3.
Negative 5 over 2, and Eden, you said 4 over 3?
No, 5 over 3.
Why negative?
It's 5 over 3.
Because you subtract the 5 by 0.
4 over 2.
Isn't it
5
3?
over 3.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Did we get this? 2n plus 5 and 3n minus 4? Okay, so
3 and then
if I set each part equal to 0, right? If I subtract 5
oh, oops, I wrote like 3 and
and then divide by 2. Sorry, I see there's not a lot of room. So negative 5 over 3, 5 over 2. Now I said the same thing. And 3n equals 4, so divide by 3.
Yeah.
So n is 4/3. Okay. Looks like the next one's probably the most difficult one here. Okay, it's all right, it's all right. So we want to get everything on one side first. So I'm going to subtract.
Subtract 3b squared by 18b squared and
Good, I'm going to line up the b squared. So do minus 3b squared, minus 3b squared, and then let's do plus 5b underneath the minus 19b. Because I want to get rid of everything on the right side. Okay, 18b squared minus 3b squared.
15b.
Good. And then minus 14b.
Minus 1. It becomes negative 120.
Okay, good. So we're going to multiply that out.
Because you have to multiply 15 by negative 8.
Oh,
What?
skip this stuff.
Oh,
So b squared minus 14b minus 120. Actually, I'm not going to put my equal 0. Okay. Whew. I think we could probably stop after this one and you can start the worksheet. Okay.
Isn't there another lesson that we should do?
No, this is it.
Oh,
Wait,
this is it?
This is it.
Oh,
I thought we have to do the practice.
Okay.
that's tomorrow.
I thought we did the practice.
So today we're just doing this solving. with the worksheet.
We don't have a day to do the
Bless you.
practice.
Can you give us one?
Wait, we don't have a day to do the practice.
We have to get it back.
What about tomorrow?
We don't have class tomorrow.
Could you put
Not at the end of the
some-
day, don't we have it at the end of the,
No,
we don't have it.
it's gold,
Okay.
that's why.
Two numbers that multiply together to give us 120. Oh, Gabe, you said you had it.
Yes, negative 20 and 6.
Minus 20 and plus 6. And this is as hard as these get, okay? Even when you get to like algebra 2 and pre-calculus, you usually don't have anything more difficult than a problem like this. So when you asked me in the beginning, does it get harder? Well, yeah, right? But this is as hard as it gets. So the whole idea of multiplying that out, right? Factoring and then reducing. Okay, so I can divide those both by 5, and these I could divide by 3. So we'll get 3b minus 4 and 5b plus 2.
What have we done?
Okay, well, now that it's factored, remember, our goal is to get it in the parentheses
So then
and then set each part equal to 0.
b equals 4 over 3, and then
Good.
b equals negative 2 over 5.
Good. Oops. Yeah, and I'm not going to worry about doing the last two here. I think we got enough practice. We agree? So 3b equals 4. So you said 4/3 and negative 2/5. Good.